Shadow Slave. By Guiltythree. Chapter 106, Creating a Monster. Under Sunny's watchful eyes, the echo began to change. The light falling from the shadow core seemed to seep into the flesh of the stone creature, making it shine with dark radiance. Wisps of shadowy fog emanated from beneath her impervious plate armor, slowly merging with it. It looked as though the stone saint was engulfed in ghostly black flame, being remade by it. What little color there was on her body was washed away and replaced with nothing but darkness. Only 2 crimson fires burning in her ruby eyes remained, slightly changing their hue and becoming more menacing. Of course, all these changes were happening on the surface. If not for the traumatic transformation that Sunny had gone through to inherit a part of Weaver's forbidden lineage, this would have been all he saw. However, with his eyes altered by the agony of consuming the drop of divine blood, he was able to see much more. Beneath the surface, the essence of the echo was being changed as well, in a way much more fundamental than its outer appearance. The shining embers that served as anchors for the weave of diamond strings had lost their radiance, becoming as transparent and empty as the shadow core itself. The diamond strings were gone, replaced by a sea of darkness. That darkness had a form, a shape that perfectly followed the lines of the stone saint's body. It was as though a living shadow was now inhabiting it, usurping the role that had been played by the pattern of the sorceress strings once. Although similar in appearance to the original echo, this new creature was a completely different type of existence. Sunny had never seen anything like it before. It was created by his aspect, after all. The process of transformation, meanwhile, was coming to the end. The ray of dark light cast by the shadow core was disappearing, its reflection drowning in the calm water of the silent sea. The black flames were already fully absorbed by the stone-like armor of the saint, gone with the dark radiance of her smooth granite skin. Sunny observed the stone saint. Clad in the lusterless black armor, with 2 ruby flames burning in the deep shadows of the visor, she looked like an incarnation of pure darkness, a noble demon sent to wage war against heaven from the depths of hell. What changed the most, however, was her presence. Before, the echo felt like an empty shell, a magical tool rather than an actual being. Now, however, there were hints of mysterious will in her crimson eyes, a subtle sense there was a nascent spark of sentience burning somewhere deep within her lightless soul. Or whatever it was that the menacing monster had instead of a soul. This was a shadow. Just as this thought appeared in Sunny's mind, the faintly familiar voice of the spell resounded above the dark waters of the soul sea. You have created a shadow monster, Stone Saint. Hearing these words, Sunny smiled. However, a second later, the smile disappeared from his lips, replaced by a pained expression. Only now, after the process was complete, he felt a subtle emptiness permeating his whole body. He felt weakened. The loss of 100 shadow fragments was finally making its effect known. He had suspected that spending them in this way would reverse the process of power accumulation that had consumed him for these last few months, but it was still an unpleasant feeling. He was much stronger than he had been during the journey through the labyrinth, however, some of his physical might was unmistakably gone, leaving him with a bitter feeling of regret. No. He had known that this would happen, and decided to proceed with the experiment anyway. It was well worth it. Forgetting about the change in his physical state, Sunny walked around his shadow and observed her from different sides. The stone saint's eyes silently followed his movements, sending glints of crimson light reflecting from the black surface of the tranquil sea. This is amazing. I wonder what she is capable of. Summoning the runes, Sunny immediately noticed that there was a new cluster shining right beneath the one describing his echoes. Shadows, Stone Saint. Excited to learn more about his new pet monster, Sunny was about to concentrate his attention on the runes, but then stopped and glanced down at his own shadow, a little embarrassed. Sorry. How are you feeling, buddy? You aren't, jealous or anything. The shadow looked away and pretended that it didn't know him. It was seemingly indifferent to the appearance of a new shadow creature in his service, even though this new shadow had a capital letter to its name. Well, I just wanted to say that you shouldn't be. I still value you very much. Even though the Stone Saint is probably capable of slicing powerful monsters into tiny pieces with her sword, while you're still just a useless piece of an incredibly capable scout and my most trusted confidant, I still appreciate you. Yeah. He stared at the shadow for a bit and, seeing that it didn't react in any way, turned away. This guy, he'd better step up his game. Ha! Focusing on the runes, Sunny summoned the description of the shadow and read, Shadow, Stone Saint. Shadow rank, Awakened. Shadow class, Monster. Shadow attributes, Battle Master, Stalwart, Spark of Divinity. Sunny blinked. It seemed as though Stone Saint's divine attribute had evolved to match his own. Was it because he was her master? This was a nice surprise. However, he still didn't see how she was different from before. Frowning, he continued to look through the shimmering runes. Shadow description, Shadow Saint was created by the treacherous lost from light in the cursed darkness of the forgotten shore. Again with this whole treachery stuff. Can I get another epithet, huh? But in the next moment, he forgot all about this little frustration. Because the following line of runes showed him something really unexpected. Just beneath the description, a familiar set of runes shined in the air, Shadow Fragments, 0200. Chapter 107, Growing Shadow. Sunny stared at the runes, perplexed. Then, a sudden light of understanding appeared in his eyes. He finally realized what was the principal difference between an echo and a shadow. It was really very simple. The echoes were mere replicas of the creatures that had left them behind. They were molded in their image and never changed, always remaining the same as the originals at the moment of their deaths. Shadows, however, were different. After all, they were mercurial by nature, always changing their forms and shapes depending on the environment. And so, a shadow was capable of change to some extent, too. It was capable of growth. His eyes widened. By slaying nightmare creatures, he was able to absorb their shadow fragments and become stronger. Eventually, his shadow core was bound to evolve, turning from dormant to awakened. And beyond. The jump in power that came with this evolution was nothing short of unmatched. Granted, he wasn't sure about the particular details of this process, not to mention that, as a human, he could only become an awakened after returning from the dream realm into the real world, which was impossible to do in this godforsaken place. He also didn't know what would happen if he actually managed to accumulate the 1,000 shadow fragments that the runes demanded. But no matter what happened, if he were to continue walking forward on the path of the awakened, he would eventually outgrow his memories and echoes, rendering them weak and useless against the enemies of the comparable rank. He would then be forced to discard them and try to find suitable replacements, with no guarantee whatsoever that he would actually succeed. This problem was not as dire when it came to memories, which were comparatively easy to get. The echoes, however, were exceedingly rare. Once an echo grew too weak to accompany its master, replacing it was an extremely tall task. But shadows. Shadows were capable of growing with him, becoming more powerful just as he grew more powerful. As long as Sunny was willing to put in the work, his shadow would never fall behind. The possibilities that this simple quality opened up were truly endless. It was enough to completely change his plans for the future. In the past, Sunny always envisioned himself as the main force on the battlefield, only relying on memories and a stray echo or two to support him. That was because echoes of higher ranks and classes were so unimaginably hard to come by. Although much more rare than memories, there were still many dormant echoes around, and a fair number of awakened ones too. They were mainly shared among masters and saints, who were capable of defeating the nightmare creature of these ranks with comparative ease. But battles against fallen and corrupted monsters, not to mention anything even more dreadful, were never easy. As such, there were not enough trophies brought back after killing creatures of their kind to make the idea of acquiring an echo of a higher rank a realistic possibility. For everyone. Except for Sunny. He could slaughter weaker monsters, get lesser echoes, and then cultivate them into unstoppable beasts of slaughter. Not bound by the laws of probability and diminishing chances, he could slowly build an army of powerful shadows to fight his battles for him, and then watch them destroy his enemies from a safe distance while sipping on a cocktail. That's what rich people drank, right? Not to mention that monsters were not bound by the need to pass nightmares to raise their rank. At least not to Sunny's knowledge. To be honest, he had no idea how nightmare creatures evolved their cores. Carapace Demon had seemed to do just fine just by eating the fruits of the soul tree and slowly absorbing large amounts of soul essence. In any case, there was a possibility that he would be able to make the Shadow Saint much more powerful than he himself had the chance to become on the Forgotten Shore. Perhaps even powerful enough to make his life here truly tolerable. Looking at the shadow with excited sparks dancing in his eyes, Sunny grinned from ear to ear. You and I are going to accomplish great things together, buddy. If his own shadow wasn't worried about its place in his heart yet, it would be smart to start worrying about it right about now. The question that was consuming Sunny's thoughts now was this: how, exactly, was he supposed to feed the Shadow Saint with fragments? If he could simply transfer some of his own to her, he would do it without a second thought, even though that would diminish his personal strength even further. However, there seemed to be no way to do so. No amount of looking at the runes, touching the silent stone creature or trying to talk to the spell did the trick. Sunny even asked for advice from his own shadow, but that guy was in no mood to talk. The scornful word, traitor, was written all over his expressionless dark spot of a face. At least that's what Sunny read from it after being met with the silent treatment. In all the excitement, he failed to remember that the shadow was physically unable to speak. Scratching the back of his head, Sunny paced around the soul sea and tried to come up with a reasonable way to stuff some shadow fragments inside the taciturn stone monster. Well, the most obvious answer is to go and make her kill some nightmare creatures. However, will it work? When my loyal scavenger killed something, it was I who received the fragments, not him. Wait, him? Did Cassie infect me with her childish desire to assign human qualities to everything? It, not him. It was I and not it. Right, that's better. Wait, what was I talking about? Glancing at the outside world, Sunny frowned. It was currently the day there. Usually, he would be sound asleep by now. Going out during the day was dangerous. He would have to walk outside the shadows, allowing all kinds of fallen horrors to lay eyes on him. He only survived for so long in this hell by being extremely cautious, cowardly, and only hunting during the night. He paid a harsh price to learn these lessons, almost losing his life in the process. But still. Should he risk it? Chapter 108, Test Dummy. Still undecided, Sunny dismissed the Stone Saint. He was curious to see if the slumbering shadow would become a sphere of light just like an echo would. However, she did not. As soon as he gave the command, the ornate armor of the stone creature was immediately engulfed in black flame, and with a gust of ghostly wind, she was gone. It seemed as though the shadow was returned into the embrace of the shadow core that had created her, and was now sleeping in its depths, bathed in the invisible waves of nurturing dark flames. Sunny scratched the back of his head. So, the shadows literally dwelled within the deepest part of his soul. He didn't really know how to feel about this, but felt that it was strangely fitting. He was a child of shadows himself, after all. With a thoughtful sigh, Sunny emerged from the soul sea and looked around his secret lair. Outside the ruined cathedral, the sun was shining above the cursed city. But none of its rays could reach this tranquil hidden chamber. Sunny suspected that once, long ago, the secret room served as the private quarters of a venerated young priestess who performed sacred rites in this temple. He had found some of her things in the modest wardrobe that was hidden behind a stone panel, somehow preserved in pristine condition despite the thousands of years that had passed since the city had fallen to the curse of darkness. If not for the lamentable disparity of their genders, he would have had a whole collection of clothes to wear, instead of spending every waking hour dressed in the same good old puppeteer's shroud. There were limits to the amount of abuse that even a fifth-tier armor could withstand. However, in a sense, he was lucky. At least his armor was made out of soft fabric. It would have been much worse if he had to wear a suit of plate armor or a rusty chainmail instead. That priestess, of course, had not used the same extravagant method to enter her private quarters. There actually was a doorway that led outside the room and into a concealed corridor that ended with a narrow stairwell. However, the stairs had long collapsed, leaving only a deep vertical shaft behind. This was Sunny's route of escape in case someone or something would find his lair. Standing up from the magnificent wooden chair, Sunny paced around for a bit and then lighted the fire under a makeshift stove, planning to make himself some late supper. The orange flames illuminated the hidden chamber, sending shadows dancing on its walls. Oh, right. I never got fresh meat. The night was so eventful that he had completely forgotten the initial purpose of his hunt. Throwing the last few strips of meat on the grill, he seasoned them with salt and sighed once again. The desire to simply venture outside and get into a fight with the nearest nightmare creature seemed more attractive with each minute. No. That's how you end up dead. To distract himself from these seductive thoughts, Sunny decided to summon the Stone Saint into the material world and perform a few experiments in the safety of his secret lair. Standing up, he willed the shadow to appear. The secretive chamber was submerged in deep shadows. His own was hidden in one of them, standing with its arms crossed on the cold stone wall. In Sunny's vision, it appeared as a silhouette made from a deeper shade of black. Usually, an echo would appear in front of the summoner, weaved from the countless sparks of moving light. However, the stone saint entrance was completely different. Instead of materializing out of thin air, she stepped out of his shadow like a sinister dark knight. Wreathed in darkness, her elegant figure emanated a sense of danger and foreboding. First, 2 ruby eyes ignited in the depths of the shadow. Then, the darkness came to life and surged forward, taking the form of the deadly stone monster. The sole of her stone-like salarit touched the floor with a loud clang, and a moment later, the shadow saint was standing in the middle of his room, her hand resting on the pommel of her sword. Sunny grimaced, feeling a slight headache. So, the shadow was hiding in a shadow, and then the shadow came out of the shadow to stand with it in the shadows. This is starting to get out of hand. I really need to come up with better terminology. He felt that this was a vital problem, but no suitable words came to his mind. Glancing at the silent duo, Sunny hesitantly asked, "Any ideas?" Sadly, both his shadow and his shadow were mute and unable to voice their opinions even if they wanted to. Left with no assistance whatsoever, Sunny sighed. "All right, I'll think of something later. For now, let's see what you're capable of." Summoning his shadow, he wrapped himself in its comforting embrace and faced the stone saint, preparing to test her strength. Inhaling deeply, he focused and gave the menacing monster a command, "Strike me." Sunny expected that the shadow would hesitate for a moment, maybe even requiring some persuasion to turn on her master. Instead, the stone saint immediately leaned forward and punched him in the chest without a second thought. With his physical prowess enhanced by the shadow, Sunny was sure of his ability to withstand one blow from the awakened monster, at least to a certain degree. However, he was wrong. So wrong. Before he could even react, the armor-clad stone fist crashed into his ribs, making Sunny feel as though he was hit by a train. In the next second, he found himself lying on the floor, surrounded by numerous pieces of broken wood. Oh no. My chair. The magnificent chair was gone, ruthlessly turned into splinters and firewood by the impact with his back. It was completely unsalvageable. Sunny's back wasn't doing much better. Turning onto his stomach with a moan, Sunny spat a bit of blood on the stone floor and weakly raised one hand, giving the shadow saint thumbs up. Ugh. Good, well done. 10 out of 10, just like. Crap, that really hurts. Just like I expected. Casting a furtive glance at the elegant stone knight, he forced a smile out and tried to stand up. I think I need to amend some details of the future experiments. Next, Sunny was planning to enhance the stone saint with the shadow before getting her to strike him again. However, on second thought, there were better ways to measure her power.